be
My husband will
McDermott.
get mad at me if I
She'll
don't.
always be McDermott to me.
Thank you.
Continuing on with our executive director's report, Ms. Maxwell.
Yes, the next item of business is a applicant request for a 50-mile waiver. And this individual wrote a letter. I mean, I don't really, trying to figure out if I should read the whole letter or just, it's kind of long. So,
Mayor Mack.
yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Alexander.
I was under the impression if you were going to get a waiver for the 50-mile rule, that the applicant and the broker appear before the commission. Is that not right?
It's not been a requirement that I'm aware of, Mr. Alexander.
Okay, I was thinking that,
There have been lots of them that have just simply written letters.
No problem. I just thought if I wanted one, I'd sure show up.
And we've told him that he might need to come. I mean, we told him that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
This person, Jeffrey Evans, he's the broker at Whitetail Properties Real Estate. And I guess I'll just read portions of this letter. Let me tell you this. He is licensed in Tennessee as a principal broker as of, as of 1/10/13. He got his license in Tennessee. He is licensed in Illinois as a managing broker, and he's been licensed there since 2006. He's licensed in Kansas, and he was licensed in Iowa, and none of those states have any disciplinary action that show against him. Just parts of the letter, he said, it was brought to my attention during my coursework a law regarding the broker supervision of licensed agents in Tennessee, and it's actually a rule, 1260-2-.01, stating that in order for a broker to employ a licensee, that licensee must live within 50 miles of the firm office, and if not, then the law states that the broker can submit a written request for an exception to this rule if it can be demonstrated to the Commission that the distance is not unreasonable and that adequate supervision can be provided. I can understand and appreciate the 50-mile rule, and he's writing this letter to have the Commission considering exempting his brokerage from this rule so they can continue their brokerage structure and hire licensees in Tennessee with their main office headquartered out of Illinois, and so that he could conduct business in our great state. Our brokerage is headquartered out of Pittsfield, Illinois, and specializes in selling hunting, recreational, and farmland exclusively. We don't list and sell homes unless they are on a larger rural property that we have listed. We are currently brokered in 13 states and have 80 agents licensed within our brokerage throughout those states. Our business model and company structure is different in that our agents work in specific territories and are hand-selected based upon not only their professional experience, but their ethics and integrity. Our hiring process is rigorous. Their first step in their interview process is a phone interview, and then after a phone interview, they do an in-person interview. He says, we are honestly not too concerned if the applicant has a formal real estate background, as we feel we can teach them real estate. But they say if not honorable by the time they reach adulthood, chances are they won't be honorable without divine intervention. This is a very strict method of hiring that has allowed us to build a successful brokerage with what we would consider the most knowledgeable and trustworthy agents and brokers in the field. You might question, how are we able to adequately supervise these agents from an office that's not even in the same state? Our answer is that by utilizing today's technology at Whitetail Properties Real Estate, we are able to teach, coach, mentor, and supervise our agents more effectively and more efficiently than 98% of the real estate companies doing business across the country. We have 3 full-time brokers in our Pittsfield office who are there to assist and interact with our agents on a daily basis. We have various methods of teaching and training that we feel help develop our agents in the field to be the most knowledgeable and hardworking you'll find. Every agent goes through a 2-day orientation at the main office in Pittsfield, Illinois, where we introduce and equip them for their exciting new careers. In addition, every other Thursday morning, we are able to educate the entire sales force through webinar training on various topics that impact the market. Yet today, we can not only talk to our agents while illustrating charts, graphs, and maps, we can see our agents on the computer screen via webcam. We have designed our own corporate enterprise resource planning, and through that, we are able to monitor the interaction between every agent, customer, and client. By closely monitoring every transaction, we are better able to protect the public while helping our agents sharpen their focus. This system also employs customer relationship management to ensure every customer and client has a great experience when dealing with Whitetail Properties real estate. Our entire sales force meets 2 times a year for a State of the Union and performance reviews. Our brokerage is in the process of joining the Tennessee Association of Realtors to assist our agents in additional training and educational outlets. We've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in technology in order to grow our business through a succession of clients who continue to do business with us. The only way this is possible is if each client has a great experience doing business with us as a result of dealing with the most informed and professional agents. With our current territory structure, we would only be looking to hire between 6 and 8 agents to represent our brokerage throughout the entire state of Tennessee. Considering our model, our approach, and our investment, our desire would be for you to please consider exempting us from the 50-mile radius rule and allowing us to manage our agents in Tennessee from our office in Pittsfield, Illinois, as we are effectively doing in all other states in which we currently do business. Our goals are not only to effectively supervise and manage, but also to protect the public. For many of our clients, buying land is one of the largest financial commitments they will make, and make it an enjoyable and memorable experience is very important to myself and my company. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and I look forward to hearing from you. Jeffrey M. Evans, broker, Whitetail Properties Real Estate, LLC. So he wants more of a blanket waiver for the agents that he would hire to work in
So he hadn't hired
offices.
anybody?
No, he's waiting to see whether or not he needs to get a principal broker in place here before he does that.
Does he have a firm license?
He has a firm license because he is a principal broker, but he has a firm license based out of,
in Illinois.
correct, he has an out-of-state license with a firm that's located in Pittsfield but licensed in Tennessee.
Well, who will prove it? For the
Well,
50-mile radius?
It's, as I say, it's a blanket.
Mr. Chairman, I move to
License.
deny.
I second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Alexander and a second by Commissioner DeShara to deny this request. Any discussion?
Don't a lot of our commercial brokerage firms do the same thing?
Their property management's exempted under the 50 miles.
Property management is, but what about commercial selling? And of course, there's a commercial management too.
Right, but
Hey,
the commercial selling, they have
You ever heard
office.
about co-op broking and referrals?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Most of them have an office
Yeah,
in the state,
they
though.
do.
I mean, you're opening this up to somebody in California having licensees here, and there's no way they can manage agents here.
Well, I don't know. I think in the future, they probably can electronically, and that's something we're going to have to address as a commission. But I don't know.
At some point, but not
I don't
today.
disagree with that, but when you offer a blanket situation like this, whether you don't know who you're dealing with, or what you've got, all you're saying is, well, we got a right to hire anybody we want to. We don't know who the agents are that they might hire.
I agree with you. I'm just
opposed-
discussing.
I'm opposed to
I
it.
haven't seen many of these. Is it typical? It's typical, though, that these people come in and you look at the individual affiliates and kind of what their history is, correct? And that's how this one is different from what you've considered in the past. Is that,
Except for there is
typically-
one that has a blanket
Generally,
waiver.
there's an affiliate or a broker that they're asking for that consideration for. In this situation, there is none. He's just asking for blanket approval to hire who he wants.
Right, and if the commission votes to deny it, then we need to tell him, is what we've indicated to him, that he needs to come in with, come in with 3 if that's what he wants to do at one time, but that he needs to come in with the individuals for whom he's seeking
Right.
the waiver.
He needs to identify who it is he's asking for that consideration
And then
for.
come in with them would
And
be the...
come in with them,
Okay,
correct.
and that's what we indicated he might have to do. I just want to make sure that's...
Any other?
Mr. Chairman, we have granted exemptions in the past, one for a logging company that was selling off large tracts of land that they did logging. Another one for lot sales where they developed these lake lot subdivisions and that sort of thing. But this doesn't appear to be that case at all.
Hearing no other discussion on the motion, all in favor say aye on the motion, which is to deny. Say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
So we'll tell him that he needs to identify the individuals and then come in with those one or more individuals that he's identified and make a request. The next item of business is the auditor update. And I sent some information out before the meeting. The auditors, we now currently have no auditors. We did have 3. One retired, as you recall, last summer. And then the East Tennessee auditor and the Middle Tennessee auditor were terminated. And then the West Tennessee auditor decided to resign. He didn't want to travel as much, and he didn't really like West Tennessee as much as he thought he might. So he's moved back to East Tennessee, and he likes to referee ball games and stuff, so it was just better for him to move back there. So as of the 30th of April, Trek has no auditors. We are trying to, look at different ways, as the commission discussed in December and January, ways to restructure the audit department so that it's going to be more productive, more efficient, more effective. At Arello, I talked to a number of people, and I think Steve and Janet did as well, about different ways that the states handle the audit. And I've talked to Assistant Commissioner Giannini about it. And it looks like the strongest proposal, and the one that a lot of states have used and it's been effective, is to have mail-in audits, and those will focus primarily on the trust funds, like not on the broad issues of what does your sign look like and do you have your licenses hanging on the wall, but rather we'll really focus exclusively on trust fund issues. And so I've written sort of a rough mail-in questionnaire form that I propose would go out randomly to firms, and then they would have to answer those audits. And the questions center on, the reconciliation. Are they reconciled monthly? Does the broker review those? And it asks for rent rolls. It asks for like a year ago bank statement versus this year's bank statement, so you can see what if there's a difference. We have right now 3,881 firms. So if you started out with 50 letters going to firms and, asking for this audit information, it would take 6 to 7 years to finish all the firms, and that's a pretty long time to have things, just out there and firms you're not contacting. If we dropped it down to 75, then you would finish in about 3.5 years, getting through all the firms as they currently exist today. And so that was my proposal initially, is to do that. I'm not sure how many people we would need. We would hire 1 or more, hopefully at least 2, investigative auditors. Those individuals would not only review this information that was coming in, but they would also be available to go and check out any kind of questions that we might have about a firm, investigate things that come up in the course of complaints that we get in. So they would be exclusively Trex and hired by Trek. And so they would work, under we wouldn't be having to use the investigators out of the investigative unit, because these individuals, they would be trained in investigative techniques. And so hopefully that would be a way to effectively make sure that the firms were in compliance with at least the trust fund rules and statutes. There's some states that send out an audit like that, a writing compliance audit, but they also do then a more educational audit that just goes out on SurveyMonkey, and you actually get credit for answering it. And that has all the more general things about your signage and, do you keep your records and some of those more general issues.
So there's no fines with that? They just get what kind of credit?
Well, they get actually CE credit for filling out the longer one. Not the trust fund is a mandatory one, and then they have another one that you can do if they ask you to do that. I'm not sure, that's too much to bite off, I think, at once. I think we better focus on just the one. The question is, what kind of enforcement do we use if one doesn't fill out that audit and get it back in?
Does this go to vacation lodging, just?
Well, it'll go to firms. I mean, we could send it to vacation lodging as well. But I mean, really, we're talking about the firms right now, the real estate
Start
firms.
with real estate firms.
Correct.
You know, with the vacation lodgings are the ones that say they have
Right, but they don't have to
hundreds of
keep it in
millions of
escrow.
dollars.
But they don't have to keep it in escrow.
Ew.
Remember, if they tell the
That's right.
renter, they don't have to keep it in escrow.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yeah.
Does the hiring freeze, does that affect us?
We have a, they're
Unfreeze it.
they're redoing Edison right now, and so we can't hire anyone till June the 17th. I think that's the date that they said. So what we wanted to do, when I talked to Assistant Commissioner Giannini, what our hope is that we can have everything in place, so as soon as they allow us to start hiring again, when they get Edison set up to do whatever they want it to do, that we'll be prepared to go ahead and get it on board. Because, you know, we don't want the firms out there without anyone auditing them. We just want to make sure that we have the best structure in place, or what appears to be the best structure in place to accomplish protecting the public and making sure that, you know, the place where the public is most harmed, which is usually monetary, that we have a good handle on that.
Are you still going to require that the new people have the accounting degree that the old auditors had to have?
Well, you know, I think that that probably a more important thing is that they have the investigative skills and some accounting, but I don't think that a 4-year accounting degree is mandatory, because really what you're doing is you're looking at the reconciliation of the books, and that's something that you don't need a 4-year accounting degree. You
Julie,
need
is
to have bookkeeping.
that in our statute or not?
No, it is not.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It doesn't, our statute doesn't require that we have an auditor at all, but it just gives us permission to go in and look at the books and records to determine if the firm is in compliance with the escrow
And I don't even
accounts.
believe it calls it an auditor there.
No,
I
they
think it
don't.
says
It says that
the
the-
executive director's
yeah.
designee or something.
The
like
commissioner or its designee. So that's,
Duly authorized
There's no law that says we have to do it.
no, there's not. I mean, and really, as I say, 312, the disciplinary portion of the statute, 6213-312, it just gives us the authority to go in and make sure that they're in compliance with the trust funds.
Ms. Maxwell, did I
Yes.
understand you say you had played around with the questionnaire, or did you say you had designed one, or?
I did design one, and it's still sort of a work in progress. And so I hope next month to be able, or really before next month, to be able to send you all something that would be maybe it has to go through the forms people, but I'm going to send it to you all before we even get that far. I don't know, I'm sort of torn. Right now it's about, I think it's about 12 pages long, just because it seems like, you know, you ask this question and then you need to ask that question as a follow-up question. And so that's, you know, part of it is going to be a work in progress, even once it gets off the ground. As we go through it and see whether, you know, this question, it doesn't seem to get what you want. One of the things I have in there is if the broker says they have a deficiency, you know, that they recognize that deficiency, what plan of action they have. You know, so that, have you thought about a corrective plan of action, or are you doing something currently to correct this, so that at least we know that they're starting to focus on that. And that still wouldn't, I mean, I would assume the commission would still, you know, take whatever steps they deem necessary if someone's in violation of the escrow provisions, but at least, you know, we can see if the individual is forward thinking about what they're going to do to correct their problems.
Your comments have all referenced the escrow account, and I think you mentioned rent roll in one situation, but are you not thinking of any other aspects such as agency, or, you know,
Well,
something other than the escrow account?
right, and really no, I mean, not at least the way it's set up right, I mean, you know, like right now, if it's a mail-in mandatory audit, then it would focus on all the trust accounts, whether it's security deposits or earnest money deposits, or rent amount deposits. It would focus primarily on those and not go through, like it would be, not go through the files and say, you know, do you get an agency agreement? Is that what you're asking, like ask the general questions?
Yeah, something in addition to escrow or security deposit violations that are relevant to other aspects of the law, such as agency or, you know, things of that nature.
And I think that's where, like, that's kind of where you do get into that question of how much of the general information does one want to ask in this mandatory audit letter. That's what I was saying, like some states have those 2 audits that go out, and one is mandatory, and that's the financial one, and the other one is, you know, is voluntary, as it were. And so that one asks more. That one actually in some states is set up more kind of like a quiz, and it does ask all those questions, the pertinent questions as far as signage and agency disclosures and what you keep in your files. We can, I mean, anything can be added to the audit. I just don't know how, you know, like I don't want it, so what I don't want is it's so onerous that it makes compliance that much more difficult. And then instead of, you know, having people comply, what happens is the commission is just, you know, given civil penalties and people, because really what we want is compliance. We want that information.
Well, if you're focusing only on the escrow aspects of it, I would hate to see it get into a situation where people have to spend a lot of time doing, you know, compiling reports that's sort of like a self-audit of their reconciliations. And, you know, I guess what I'm saying is the minimum amount of work involved in compiling this form would be the way I would go. I mean, either you do bank reconciliations or you don't. Either they balance or they don't. So
right.
How many questions can you ask about an escrow account that would lead to a 12-page questionnaire?
Well, I mean, it's some of it is not just the here's whether you reconciled it or not. Some of them actually are, you know, do you keep the security deposits? Do you keep them in, you know, do you keep them in a banking institution? Do you always make sure that they're deposited in a timely fashion? So some of it are those portions that come underneath escrow, that sort of reminders that you're talking about, like you would ask, do you have the agency disclosure? So there are some of those parts of that. I hate to say it, but
it sounds like you're focusing on property management. And I don't want to see a questionnaire that focuses on property management only. If we're going to put together a questionnaire, it should represent a questionnaire for all all the firms, not just property management firms. Right,
and it does, and because that was another question, is do you have sort of break it into 2 parts and say if you're involved in property management, answer these last set of questions, and if you're not, then, you know, you don't need to answer those. I mean, that I sort of, like, that's kind of a question as well. Would that be the best approach to take? I mean, because you do really and truly want the principal brokers to answer it, and you don't want it to be so onerous that it just becomes another thing you got to fill out, and that you just you either don't spend the time, because really you want them to spend the time to do it and do it properly, so that we have that information. The information is accurate and correct. And if we don't get it, then obviously it'd be the investigative auditor's person, it'd be their job to follow up on that.
Because of circumstances, we find ourselves in this situation, and I have to say again, I'm not going to say I'm glad, but I don't see the need for having auditors going out doing random stops, checking on firms, when there's been no reason for that individual to suspect that there's some problem there. I'd much rather see somebody going out being helpful to a company. A new company that's getting started needs to have certain things impressed upon them that you know, mistakes that other firms have done that need to be kind of watched. And I see an opportunity for this to happen under these circumstances. I like the questionnaire, but I'm not at all hurt that we don't have auditors to go out in the field.
Right, no, and that really was not a productive exercise at all, as everyone knows. That was really not accomplishing, I think, whatever the original goal was. And that That is one question I had. Would it be a good idea if maybe 6 months after firms open that these individuals would go, or, kind of group together in different locations and go visit with them and just kind of stop and see how things were going?
Ms. Mack, in the system, can you tell me, I'm talking about my own personal firm or firms, how many times they were audited and when the last time they were audited?
Yes, we have that on the,
You have that, if you have that data.
yes, we do have that.
In that data, does it also tell you that whether you found any violations or any irregularities?
Yes, it does.
Then it seems to me that you would go back, and when you decided to send these audits out, instead of mass mailing everybody, the 3,000 and something firms, a paper audit to audit my escrow account or what, that you go to those firms that have shown that they have a deficiency or have problems, and you concentrate on those instead of those firms that's had no problems. Why? That's what's happened over the years for the last 40 years that I've been in business, that you've had an auditor and they show up and they audit me year after year, or XYZ company, they've never found any infractions. It was simply a place to camp out.
Right, and because you were easy to get in touch with and
I'm
you had
easy to
somebody
get in
there all
touch
the
to.
time.
Everything's been in order.
Right.
So I show up there. Then you come along and you have those firms that we have had problems with. There's numerous firms since I've been on this commission that's been in front of this commission because of the same problems.
Right.
Now, why would you then not concentrate on those people instead of the people first, instead of those that have had a clean bill of health for 3, 5 years, 10 years? Then when you get caught up with those problem folks,
Right.
then you come back and you check me, or if I'm a problem person, you go ahead and check me. I'm not saying I'm clean. What I'm saying, it is a waste of time to do that, in my opinion, because you've got those habitual folks that's not going to do anything you do anyway, and we haven't been able to do with them. We've got them still operating.
Right.
But to come back though and spend our time, I think we could spend it better by knowing where the problems are, and you now tell me that you know where the problems are.
We do. I mean, we have that
Huh?
information. We do have that information.
Does that?
No, I think that sounds like a great idea, because that'd be a great way to start, like a way to narrow down how you're going to start and then fan out from there. I mean, I think that's a great idea.
Well, we're going to send everybody an audit. Then you tell me it takes 3 years, 7 years
That's
to
how,
get
yeah,
through all
to
of
get,
that. So you start with the problem shoulder,
and then work out from
and
there.
then you work out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
And then you may want to have a random check, maybe, of those non-problems, just or positive, just to check. But I think you waste. We're back. We're not going to accomplish what we want to accomplish or what we have not been
Right,
able to
because
accomplish.
it puts you sort of back potentially
We're right
where
back.
you were
We're right
before.
back in that
Right.
same cycle.
No, I think that's a great idea, because there are a lot of them out there that just are repeat. Definitely don't ever get out of the problem stage.
You mentioned there were several other states doing this, so we don't really have to reinvent the wheel. They ought to have some questionnaires probably we could
They do, and what
refer
I've
to.
done is I've sort of taken bits and pieces of their questionnaires and
I mean, there
combined
are some
them
of them that have
into
been doing
one.
this for a while. so
Right, some have been like
They
Nebraska.
know what
yeah.
works and what doesn't work.
Right,
And then you're going to bring it back to the
yes,
commission.
and that's what I've done, is I've sort of, as I say, I did take bits and pieces from different ones and combined them into a form that fits our law, fits our section.
And does Arello offer education for investigators?
They do offer that, and so does Clear, and so does FARB, and that's something, and Arello's, I think, or it might be FARB, one of them's getting ready to offer it online, so that would be beneficial as well, at least maybe an introductory course online. And that's something that I think is, and having talked to individuals at Arello, I think that's definitely something, because I think the investigative intuitive nature is not is harder to get. You got to teach people how to ask those
Right.
follow-up questions and ask the hard questions.
In your opinion, you think that the administration is going to give you one person, three persons, or five people?
Not five, I don't think.
I think we will maintain the three or.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I don't think, well, and part of it is, like, we'll have to see how the workload goes, because I'm not really sure how long it's going to take the person to go through these things and then go out and do different things, but I think we'll be able to start out with at least 2 and work up to 3, and I think that should cover the state, although that might not be true.
As we transition into this, is it at all possible to do, I know we'd have to do, go through legislature to do this probably, but to have the firms licensed due every 4 years instead of every 2, just double their fee, and send the audits out when their renewal is due. And as part of their renewal, they have to complete the audit.
Well, I don't know about the changing would take from 2 to 4 plus raising the fees.
Well, I think you do, and I've read your information that you've sent out, and I think it's excellent. And I was simply offering some suggestions.
Right, no, I thought that's a great idea.
And I think that when we look at it, when you take it again next month, and Isaac's got some thoughts, I have some thoughts, and we'll all look at it and go from there. But I commend you on what you're doing and what you've done. It seems to me that 2 of those folks ought to be working in the office, and all 3 of them ought to be signed to Nashville, and then pay them mileage to go wherever they ought to in any direction, then they can't fuss.
Right, and I think that's what the thought is, that we will put them in the Nashville office and not have them out in the field, living out in the field.
But you start with the problem children first.
Right, and I think that's a great idea, because that way you can narrow those down, and that kind of, as I say, it gives you a focus to start with. And you're right, that's the thing you don't want to do, is fall back into those same people who just get hit with things.
And I think that one other thing, and I'm that you need to take into consideration the paperless files, because it's here.
Right, and I mean, people can send files in, most people have them electronically, and they can send them in to us with no problem.
It's going to come, and very few folks keep files, so you don't have to for 5 years if your problem 2 or 3 the other way.
And you don't, I mean, then there's even less reason to go to a firm, because you've got your stuff stored electronically, and you can send whatever.
I got 30 years I've stacked in a trailer. You'd be surprised what's in them.
I bet.
I got 40 years. So.
I bet.
When you go to sell in the same house 4 and 5 times in 40 years, and those files are there.
You can find out a lot of things.
It's a lot of source.
Right.
A lot of source.
I mean, and I think we have a great opportunity to craft something that will work well. I hope, would work well for the firms and protect the public and protect the licensees at the same time. And I mean, it just happened to work out that, we have an opportunity to restructure this.
How quickly do you think you'll get some feedback from the administration?
Quickly, I mean, I think Assistant Commissioner Giannini wants to be able to likewise be ready to have our documents to submit to hire, to interview people as soon as I say, I think it's June 17th that they have Edison closed until then. And it's really not a freeze so much as they're reworking Edison to make some accommodations, or NeoGov, so that's why, I mean, we submitted some information to, and were granted the ability to hire a licensing tech right before it closed, which was 10 days ago. So there was just this flurry of people apparently all over the state submitting requests to, interview people and hire people before it closed. So, but they're very much in a hurry to get it in shape, because we don't want to just have no one out there auditing and investigating the firms.
I assume my motion is dead now that I made a few months ago.
Yeah, well, it just worked itself.
What was that motion, Ms. Allen?
That we abolish the audit positions.
They just kind of took care of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
It worked out, but I do want, any suggestions that you all have, it really is a work in progress, and I think everyone wants to make sure that it's effective and efficient, and it doesn't fall.
Do you think Ms. Maxwell, that by June, you could, I know you've been in contact already with some of the states and the way they do it, and have a summation for us at our June meeting?
Of how the other states do it?
Yeah, and
Yeah, I can do that, yeah.
for us to look at.
Because I pretty much have that, I mean, handwritten out, I don't have it typed, I have it handwritten out.
Telling people to open his email, he's got a lot of stuff now he hadn't read.
Well,
Indeed he
that kind of addresses one of my questions is, how many firms do you have that don't communicate with you through emails or like these online surveys? Do you have any way of knowing how many firms are out there that aren't electronically
Gifted? Let's see, I think I know one.
I think I know one
That
real
might be in
well.
the loan, might be the loan one.
I am connected to all of this. I just don't ever check it.
But it won't do her any good
long
to
as
see
they
one
won't be in
email
need
for
of
an
trying to
audit.
audit you with it.
We'll have to be mailing and
She'll
yours
call
to
me and tell me
you.
she sent it, and I'll go get it.
Fax it. Yeah.
I'd rather
Mr.
like,
Chairman, I think
I'd rather
the-
like the Commissioner DeChara's thought about the 4-year licensing and tying this into self-evaluation. And of course, that's going to require legislation because the statute says 2 years.
Well, that puts everything.
We're talking about doing something in June. The legislature starts back up in January.
Well,
I
that's
don't,
staggered for you.
I don't think we can wait that long to deal with this issue, but it does give us time to kind of work things. I mean, look at the whole picture as opposed to just dealing with this one issue.
Right, and then, I mean, by that time, at least, hopefully, we'll be able to see whether compliance is a problem. I mean, because that really, as I say, really what we want people to do is send the information and give us the information. You don't want to just assess a penalty, and because that's not really accomplishing our goal of getting the information and making sure that
I'm not sure
public's
that you're
protected.
gonna, if I'm gonna be devious, I probably could send you by email a balanced E&O account.
But see, the other part of what I think is a good idea is what a number of states do, and that is give TREC the right to look at the escrow, to view the escrow accounts. I mean, it has to be signed by the broker
Not
and
gonna do that.
I know that I know, but I mean, that way you can make sure that
Like you,
the information is correct.
You can ask me to supply you a copy of a bank statement that shows the reconciliation.
Which
but
is
I'm
one
not
thing
gonna
I
give you
asked
the
for.
right to go into my bank account.
I don't think.
It would only be to view, it wouldn't be to,
It's none of your business at that point.
only the escrow accounts. But I mean, there are really a number of states, there are probably 20 states at least, if not more, that do require that. And the depository institution obviously has to sign on it too. But that, I mean, and it wouldn't, well, I mean, I know that but it is not something that you would hope that you would have to use really very frequently. It would just be, that would be available if you thought something
If there
was.
was a problem.
Or if you just thought that somebody was sending you something that might be doctored.
But I come back
Well,
to
then
you.
come out and do a visual, you know. At that point, you come out and check my records in person. Otherwise, get a court order.
Well, we don't have really the authority to get that court order.
Well,
That would-
I think you've got some validity with what he's talking about.
Yeah,
But you also, it makes, why, that's why I'm saying you go after those folks, because we're sitting here letting people operate today that we know it's in violation. And what can you do about them? That's just like we know
Yeah.
that they're operating and you've already suspended their license,
or like Judy Jones, who we revoked her license, and
still operating.
someone called about her. I mean, yeah, we referred her to the DA, and somebody
Huh?
called about her probably 2 weeks ago, as I recall.
What do other states do about that?
You know, that, other states, that's something that.
Operating without a license, even though their license been revoked, or they've never had a license, and they're out there blatantly operating.
And I talked to some people at Arello about that, and I mean, that's an issue that everybody faces, and no one seems to have a real good answer for what you do when that happens. I mean, you can,
Well, it'd be a whole lot easier if I could do business without the real estate commission on my back.
yes, I think
You
there's,
just had a situation come before you to ask somebody to give them a 50-mile radius that you're gonna turn them loose, let them do anything they want to if you'd agreed to let them have as many agents as they want.
Well, we didn't.
Well, but that's the same principle.
At the Arello meeting that Eve, the meeting that she chaired, Commissioner Char and I we asked that question to the jurisdictions that were present. Well, what do you do about this situation that we're discussing? And no one had an answer.
Really?
and everybody faces it.
Right.
And with this day, with all the stuff that's posted on the internet and people out there, wow.
Not even
Well,
Texas.
Maybe we're just changing.
The problem is, it's just like us, they send it to the Attorney General, and then it just kind of sits there, and it's not egregious enough that they feel like wasting their time on it to them.
We sent it to the district attorney, but we did meet with the AG about some other issues the other day, and I mean, it does have to, like, there has to be a pattern of deception for the AG to tackle something, and it has to be pretty widespread. But the DAs, that, you know, they're prosecuting, I mean, they got a lot of stuff on there. Yeah, and so it really is, it's difficult. In most of the situations that we've encountered, the money that each individual person has lost they don't have the time or the money or the resources to go into small claims court or hire an attorney. And if they go to the police, they just don't, I think they kind of equally fall down the list of things to do. So there's not an easy solution. And even like Judy Jones, we couldn't go in and seize her bank account, seize the escrow accounts that she had that day. And you know, that's.
Do some states do that?
Yeah, some states did have that ability.
Oregon's got the ability actually, and they've only exercised it twice. The law, I think, was just effective in 2011. They can actually have a receiver appointed. If they, you know, go and find that a firm is continually operating, mishandling escrow funds, they can get a receiver appointed to basically run the firm, almost like you would do in a bankruptcy situation. It's kind of an interesting, and I think it sounds like their threshold to do that is very, very high, as you can imagine. And that's the only state, I think, that has that authority. But it does give them some protection.
I think the Department of Revenue here in the state has that authority.
Right, Isaac knows that, right?
Yeah, because a friend of mine, he's an auctioneer, he owed the state some money, and they swept his escrow account.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
No, they can't sweep your escrow account. They can sweep your.
It's operating account. I'm sorry,
that's why
it's
you
operating
put
account.
it. You know, that's why you put it in. That's why it has to be labeled escrow or trust account, because that can't be swept.
Right.
And so that's the
operating
whole purpose is, you know, it can't be swept because it's technically not your money. And that's why the escrow accounts are so important. They're set up as escrow accounts or trust accounts that indicate that it does not belong to you. I mean, now they can go in and look to see if you're just scamming them.
Money.
But yeah.
Money like for,
Some excise tax or something. I don't know
Commissioner
exactly. Yes, Commissioner.
They'll do it
Arnold.
for privilege tax as
The Department of
well.
Revenue routinely places liens on bank accounts and pulls funds from those accounts.
And actually, so will an attorney who has a lien against your property, I mean, a lien against whatever it is, they'll go in there and sweep those accounts.
child support, they can put a lien on their operating account too.
That's,
I just want to remind the commission, if we don't move along, we're going to be here to midnight.
okay, so, well, I'll get,
Like you keep speed on schedule.
That snowball pickup speed is.
I'll get the other additional information on the auditors, and as I say, any suggestions that any commissioner has will be great. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to start targeting those. And the renewal notices, which is the next item on the agenda, that last month the commissioners indicated that they would like to go back to the sort of invoice renewal notice in an envelope. And I talked to Assistant Commissioner Giannini about that, and he didn't seem opposed to that. And he thought a good way to start doing it would be to have a letter that went out explaining the new audit process, and then that put the invoices, and so that you could just then carry on with the invoices. There's a new statute that allows us to email information to everyone, but right now we don't have email addresses for everyone.
It's opt-in. It's an opt-in.
An opt-in, right.
Could we get a red or a stamp and do red ink that just says invoice enclosed and stamp the envelopes when they go out?
Well, we would have to hand stamp those. They'll go out through state, well, for printing in state postal.
They'd be printed with that on it rather than using a stamp.
I mean, so I don't even know if they would,
Printed on there.
yeah, but I don't, we'll have to check and see how much more that costs to do that. But I think people open the little invoice, I mean, the little envelopes.
They do, and a couple of people that are here today, if you ask them, they threw their pink postcards away.
Well, I like my pink postcard.
I do too. I got mine out there in my car. I was gonna bring it in, I forgot it. I mean, that pink postcard, I mean, that's
Well, now,
neon sign.
I think that's great.
does the commission still think we need to send, right now, there's a notice that goes to the firm. This is if a person's active. It goes to the firm, and it goes to the person at the firm, the principal broker at the firm, and the person at home. Like, so that an active individual would get all of those notices. Now, does the commission still think it's necessary?
I think if it goes to the firm, to the principal broker, and it goes to the agent at home, that should be sufficient. The broker has got notice that it's expiring, and then the person does too.
See, like I think probably up until 3 years ago, it only went to if you were active, it only went to you at your firm, or, went to the firm, because that's where we traditionally send all.
I think to be safe, it ought to be all three.
Well, but so many people
It's
never
costing us
go to
a
their
minute of
offices
money.
anymore.
That's why I say I think to be safe, it'd be all three. A lot of people go to their office.
But you look at your cost.
To the firm and to the broker. I mean, the
Well,
broker is the firm.
But, because it was going to the individual at the firm, so because it was,
And the individual.
right, and then to the broker at the firm, and then to the person at home, the individual at home. And as I say, so this is an active person, the retired people are different.
Licensees and one to the firm.
Anybody that opts in will be sent renewal notices by email.
You send it to me.
Which will be
Well, had we made a motion and decided to change to envelopes, or were you just researching that?
Well,
I actually think I made a motion.
yeah, and I think that then we decided to defer any action so that we could research it
But we never did vote on
further.
that.
No, so that's what, and so I wanted to find out whether, as I say, you all thought they still need to go to all three sources, or if you thought we could cut those down, and
Is it more expensive to do the envelope?
it really doesn't turn out to be more expensive. It turns out to be about the same price that we're paying right now.
Leave it like it is, leave it with three.
Okay, and then the
That way,
statute,
then you haven't broken the pattern, and then all those folks say, well, I didn't get my notice, well, I didn't get it at home with this other. And
I think it needs to be three.
three, I do too. I think y'all would send it to all three places.
okay, and then there is the statute that allows people to opt in to the email, and which point you can have your information sent by
If they
email.
opt to email.
Which will be-
And there's a link to that on our website.
Then
saying
if
here's where you
if they
go.
do that, that removes our responsibility.
Correct, and so then those things will go out, whatever we send will go out, which will be great. I don't know how responsive people will be to that, but hopefully.
Well,
Does that email option affect the firm if a licensee chooses that? Or does the firm still get a hard copy?
No, I would assume that, I think it's a person, you have to do it.
I think it's the
personal.
person. I think it's.
Firm would still get.
Firm still
Right.
gets the card or the letter, whichever.
And I don't know about you guys, but my email does not always work. And I had problems with Real Tracks at one time, putting things in the garbage that weren't.
Yeah, and someone had said at Arello, and I don't know if you were, if anyone else was in this meeting, but they had said that when they send email notices to the firms, and like a firm like Keller apparently has a pretty tight, system that scans emails that come in, that once you got rejected by them, that many of the other ones rejected you as well. Because whatever their spam filter is, it was just one of those that I guess the other ones respected or something, and the other firms.
Email's
were-
not reliable.
Well, but they had said that this was, I think it was maybe Louisiana, that said that they had run into a problem with that. So that, and they didn't know how to overcome that. They would tell Keller to take that off, but apparently then it defaults back to that. So I don't know. But anyway, that's just something I guess we'll have to see when we get to that point, if that happens.
Okay.
And the bad thing is it doesn't bounce back. Like your emails that didn't go through, they didn't bounce back to us.
They never bounced
So
back.
we
but-
didn't know that you had they had been rejected.
Yeah, and then I didn't know.
Yeah,
And then even when I looked for them, they couldn't find them. They don't know what happened to them.
yeah, and that's
Because
bad. and
servers
that's
are just not, yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know how,
I don't either.
but then we get stacks of return mail, literally stacks
Yeah.
of return mail. So, it's not an easy way to overcome that.
What's next, Mr. Chairman?
Or you said to move
Arillo.
next? Arillo, yeah. Or we can defer that and we can talk about the last three things that aren't going to take long. Are we
Take
short on
about-
time?
No, we got 20.
Oh, okay. Arillo, we can,
Yeah,
okay. I mean,
because I don't think that, Steve,
I'll let-
how long is your report gonna last?
I have no concerns on the education report or the instructors. There is one agenda item that will go into a
Okay.
discussion
So-
for Commissioner Chara.
So we got enough time, Ms. Maxwell.
Okay, well, I have some things that I found interesting, but if Janet, I can let Janet and Steve go first so that,
One of the things I found the most interesting was in the fair housing meeting.
Hate to interrupt. Tell us where you went and a little bit about where you were,
Well,
where you
and what
were
a
learning
Rello
all this
is.
stuff.
Commissioner Stevenson and I were supposed to go to Scottsdale, Arizona, along with Ms. Maxwell and Mr. McDonald. However, Commissioner Stevenson, as usual, bailed. So he did not go.
I'm saving the state money.
Uh-huh. It was on the weekend.
Yeah.
Now, can I tell about the fair housing?
Go for it.
Okay. In the fair housing meeting, several of the states are now being fined by fair housing, by the government, for language in advertising that does not stand up to fair housing guidelines. Some of the states actually have MLS systems in place that goes in on the backside and flags words that are not in compliance with fair housing. The Washington, D.C., their commission does that. It goes in and flags fair housing issues, and when there's a fair housing violation, they are issuing fines. So some of these firms are being fined $50,000, $100,000 for language in their MLS advertising. And one of the things that just came up recently was with IDX feeds, everything that everybody lists is on IDX feeds and it's feeding through to your website. And a guy down in Florida had an IDX feed, and let's just say, for instance, it was my website, but it was Michelle's listing. Her listing fed through to my website. It had language on it that was in violation of fair housing, and I got fined because it was on my website. And that actually happened to a guy in Florida. NAR did go in in support of that and go back and say that the person who initiated it was the one in violation of fair housing. But that's one thing that's really going to pick up some speed is the MLSs with the fair housing violations. They're now going into those MLSs and finding agents for violations and what they write on the MLS.
What are some of the specific words?
Well, it like in different areas, it's different things, because in Washington, D.C., they have 19 protected classes. And one of their protected classes is source of income. So if they put in there no Section 8, then they're in violation of fair housing. And that was one of the firms that got fined $48,000. Somebody called in to their firm and said, "Do you have any Section 8 housing?" And they said, "No, we don't have any Section 8. They didn't say we don't do Section 8, they said, no, we don't have any. What they should have said is we don't currently have anything available, but they didn't say that. They said, no, we do not have any Section 8. And that was
How do you prove that?
They don't have to. They don't have to. These testers are out there testing, and if they call you and you don't answer the question right, they've got a tape recorder on you, and you have messed
But that's
up.
only because they have in DC that protected class that has to do with income.
And in DC, yes.
Yes.
That's a protected class. But now, the 3 newest ones that are protected classes that NAR has already put in the Code of Ethics and is pretty much going nationwide is the gays, lesbians, and transgenders. So you have to be very careful about, like, running an ad in the newspaper and says, only males need apply, or, you know, if you're leasing an apartment or something like that, you have to be careful about being gender specific.
Steve, do we have, what are our protected classes in Tennessee that, would that be a nice, interesting newsletter that maybe Janet could write an article for?
That would be fantastic. I've got the rough draft for the current News Journal. I was just waiting for the E&O award list that goes out.
That would be, people would like to read that.
Yep.
Sounds great, Janet.
But as it applies to Tennessee.
Well, and
I mean,
that's
yeah, DC, I know they've got some horror
the
stories.
gays, lesbians, and transgenders is nationwide now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing that's kind of sweeping the country at this point.
Right.
And that's where a lot of these fines are going to be issued.
Vice Chairman, that's a great idea.
Just in addition to what Commissioner DeChara said, I attended a conference with the Deputy Director of HUD for Fair Housing about 3 weeks ago, and she advised us that they do have additional funding now for testing, and that they are actively involved in testing throughout the country, and they're focusing not just on the rental industry, but they're also focusing on lending and real estate activities as well.
We feel like that my company gets anywhere from 3 to 5 hits a week of testers on the resale of these HUD listing homes. Do you have them? What are they? What's the room count? You never know, but you get that feeling after you listen to them and listen to the questions that you pretty well know that it's some tester testing you to see what kind of information you're putting out, and if you're putting out enough information.
Do you think some of them are looking to see how the houses are maintained in certain districts as well? That was one of the things they had talked about at Arello, that was the big concern, you know, is how.
One of these acquisition companies that we are representing now, every time you go in, or once a month on this particular company, you make 60 or 80 pictures.
Each time you go into the house?
No, once a month.
Once a month.
On initial inspection of this particular company. You make, if you go in a bedroom, you make it 2 pictures of each angle. Every month we do that if that house is still in thing.
Mr. Chairman, permission to address the audience.
Commissioner Flitcroft, address the audience.
Folks, be careful. When you're making a presentation to a FSBO, say, look, HUD's out there, and they wouldn't be the least bit upset with levying a fine against a FSBO. Tell them, we know what these protected words are. If you use the wrong words, you could get a bill from HUD for $48,000, and that would not make their day. It's part of professionalism, is educating the public as to the dangers of all this thing. Not a place for novice to play.
Commissioner Pickwick, I'll also add that in this conference that I attended, they have situations where they are investigating real estate commissions as well as, mortgage companies and boards of realty.
And what are they, the commission, is it the decisions that are made?
With regards to
and the
decisions that are made and policies and procedures.
Have they brought any actions against any of them?
There was reference to some pending action, and she gave the state, but I can't remember what it was without my notes. But yeah, they are looking at real estate commissions,
That's interesting.
or regulatory bodies, I'll put it that way.
Right, yeah, that's interesting.
If we could stop just for a minute, we're gonna have to change out our tape back here. I'm being informed by our audio technician back here at the back